Some things have changed a lot since the 70s. People no longer walk to school uphill both ways in the snow. Kids don't carry their computers to class every day, and students don't get suspended for having long hair. But while we've come a long way in some areas, when it comes to what school is like, there are a few things you just won't believe were normal back then. And if you stick around until the end, we'll share what one person had to say about what they liked best about going to school in the 1970s. So get ready to go back in time, because this is you won't believe what schools were like in the 1970s. The school day. For many kids today, the school day starts early with an 8 a.m. bell. But back in the 70s, classes didn't start until 9 a.m. And because there was no kindergarten, first graders were already on their second hour of class by the time their younger counterparts started their day-to-day. Recess also happened mid-morning instead of mid-afternoon, and most schools only let kids outside for half an hour. After lunch, it was back to class for the third hour, and elementary school students were dismissed at 3 p.m., while high schoolers could be in class all day and still have homework. That's why it's so hard to believe that summer vacation lasted for 3 whole months back then. Classroom. Today's classrooms look very different than they did in the 70s. Back then, chalkboards were everywhere, and there were rows and rows of desks facing the front of the class where students sat with their arms crossed while the teacher lectured. There were no computers, projectors, or even smart TVs, which meant that if you wanted to show your classmates a picture, you had to pass around a magazine. The pace of learning was much slower back then as well, and students repeated grades more often. It was normal for students to take 5 years to finish elementary school, and teachers usually focused on the basics. Since technology made its way into the classroom in the 80s, more and more subjects became specialized. Subjects. In the 1970s, it wasn't uncommon for schools to teach typing as a subject. They also offered home economics, or shop class for boys. Shop class taught woodworking and metalworking, but girls were mostly relegated to home economics, where they learned basic cooking skills and how to sew. Since math was considered an essential skill, it was rare for a kid to fail their math class. In fact, many schools started fractions in first grade, and by 5th grade students could be studying algebra. It wasn't until later that math became more specialized with advanced placement courses, honors, and calculus. Even recess was a lot different back in the 70s. There weren't any organized sports, and kids played traditional games like kickball, foursquare, or red rover. Bullying was rampant, and there weren't any adult supervisors watching over everyone. Fashion. In the 1970s, there were stricter dress codes, and schools enforced them. Most students wore uniforms consisting of a polo shirt with the school logo and either pants or a skirt. Girls' skirts were always the same length, and if they were too short, they would be sent home. While boys couldn't wear their hair too long, girls weren't allowed to have long hair either. This meant getting a trim every few weeks. Students who didn't follow the dress code were often sent home until their parents could bring them new clothes. Sometimes it could take days before students could return to class. If you thought today's hairstyles were ridiculous, just check out the afros, feathered hair, and Farrah Fawcett flips that were popular back then. Other popular looks included bell-bottoms, platform shoes, and tie-dye everything. Discipline. Discipline was much stricter in the 1970s, and schools were quick to punish those who broke the rules. Corporal punishment was common practice. Teachers carried wooden paddles or other implements of pain that they used to deliver swift and sometimes excessive punishments. Some schools were even known to have special rooms for unruly students where they were locked up for the rest of the day. While some people argue that this type of discipline was necessary, others claim that it went too far. No one will ever forget the dread they felt when hearing the shrill voice of the principal calling out their name over the intercom. School lunch. If you think the food at your school cafeteria is bad now, just wait till you hear what they were serving in the 70s. Most schools served pizza on Mondays and Wednesdays, and if you were lucky enough to go to school in the Northeast, you might have gotten a pastrami on rye sandwich too. Every school served milk, but the quality varied depending on where you lived. Some kids drank fresh milk delivered daily by local farmers, while others got their milk from big plastic jugs stored in a utility closet. Students who brought their lunches from home often complained about ants crawling into their snacks and drinks. Vending machines weren't as popular back then, so if you wanted a snack, you had to wait until lunchtime. Extracurriculars. After school, Many students participated in extracurricular activities like sports or music. Some of the most popular sports for boys included football, baseball, and wrestling, while girls preferred cheerleading, basketball, and softball. Music class was also mandatory for all students, but those who wanted to play an instrument in the marching band had to try out. The school day ended at 4 p.m. for most students, but those participating in extracurricular activities had to stay late for practice. Transportation. Most kids took the bus to school, but students who lived close enough walked. And for those who biked, safety was a major concern. Most bikes didn't have helmets back then, and kids rode wherever they wanted without any traffic regulations. When the school bell rang, crossing guards made sure everyone got across the street safely. Then they stayed outside until all the cars had passed and the coast was clear. Once inside, they would sit in the same seat every day and recite the safety rules before the bus driver turned on the ignition. If you were riding in the front row, you were guaranteed a good lecture on what would happen if you didn't fasten your seatbelt. But if you were in the back, chances were nobody could hear the driver anyway. Back then, it was legal for kids to sit in the aisle and even stand up when the bus went over bumps. Nowadays, things have changed a lot. Buses are equipped with seatbelts and cameras, and if you don't put yours on, the driver will announce it over the loudspeaker for everyone to hear. Social. Even though schools were segregated in the 60s, things started changing by the 70s. Some schools integrated, but racial tensions were still high. Bullying was also rampant, and if you were different in any way, you were likely to become the target. But students weren't all that accepting of each other back then. In fact, they were pretty rude. Calling someone a nerd or dork was commonplace, and it wasn't unusual for students to make fun of others behind their backs. Some things have definitely changed since then, but sadly, there are still bullies and cliques in schools today. What has changed? Things have changed dramatically when it comes to what school is like compared to the 70s. From teaching styles to classroom technology, bullying and social dynamics. But what hasn't changed is the importance of creating meaningful relationships with our students and helping them grow academically and socially. We may not have all the bells and whistles that today's schools have, but we can learn a thing or two from the 70s. And if you grew up back then, we appreciate you sharing your experiences with us. We'd like to thank a contributor for sharing her memories of what school was like in the 70s. She said, "I loved having the freedom to roam the neighborhood and not having to worry about my parents knowing where I was at all times. I had a great childhood and the greatest friends. Thanks for watching and subscribing. And remember to hit that like button. We'll see you next time."